the National Executive Committee is convening this evening at 4 p.m. and then we will take a decision and communicate to the public.
With the withdrawal of the case against you, can you briefly tell us what happened in court today?
Unfortunately, I wasn't in court myself. It's difficult for me to comment on the details of what transpired. But basically on the fact that once the two parties, which is government and UTAG, had agreed that they would get back to the negotiation table, but premised also on the fact that if the case is not discontinued, we cannot be engaged in negotiations whilst we go back and forth in court, also trying to resolve issues of litigation. I suppose it would form a good basis by virtue of government showing some goodwill with the withdrawal of the case from court. And so the lawyers would be in our meeting to give us
an update,
briefing in detail, and then we would take a decision on the basis of that.
From what you say, one thing is clear. You are going back to the negotiation table. What are your expectations?
Well, of course, there are outstanding matters that have to be cleared. And we also gave ourselves a roadmap within a period of 1 month to conclude negotiations on all of those outstanding issues. And also that very clearly stated in the roadmap that government would treat this time around with the kind of respect that UTAG deserves. We are very much aware of the reason for which we got to this point, which is the fact that many of the times when the government calls for meeting, some of them don't show up, and so they don't form a quorum for us to be able to engage, or that they send people who don't have the gravitas to be able to make decisions that are binding on government. And we expect that in the MOA as well as in the roadmap, the indication is clear that they need to change that attitude. And if we go for meetings and they are repeating the same, the crux of the matter is that the action is suspended or would be suspended, and that if they do so, we would have to reactivate, realizing that we are not making any headway.
So assuming your expectations are not met, what will be UTAG's next line of action?
Well, of course, we've given ourselves within 1 month, and in the course of that month, if government shows the same kind of attitude for which we have had to arrive at the decision of withdrawing teaching and related services, then the implication is that we would reactivate those the withdrawal, as is currently the case.
Thank you very much for your time. I was grateful. I was speaking with Dr. Samuel Nkuban. He's the president for the University of Ghana chapter of UTAG, and according to him, well, there's been a partial withdrawal of its members on the strike actions that they are embarking on, but not a full suspension of it. The Presidential Advisor of Health, Dr. Anthony Nsayasari, has stated that the Agenda 111 hospital project is not an afterthought. According to him, the COVID-19 pandemic presented a lot of challenges, especially to the health sector. The Agenda 111 idea was consequently mooted. Dr. Nsayasari was reacting to former President John Mahama, who has described the government's Agenda 111 hospital project as an afterthought. Mr. Mahama maintains that the hospital projects will not be completed before the NPP leaves office. Dr. Nsayasari also reacted to the minority in Parliament's demand for government to account for more than 600 million Ghana cedis in its utilized on Agenda 111 projects captured in this mid-year budget review.
President is only 8 months in the second term. I'm sure somebody have talked about this in maybe in 2024 January. Then I will agree with the person as an afterthought. So I don't know what the afterthought is. This is something that His Excellency the President has seen because of COVID, which is a pandemic in every country. Everybody wants to have hospital beds and also have health facilities which are very stable in the country, in their country. It's not only Ghana. We also saw almighty India, where people were being treated in cars with oxygen on them. Even in the US, people were treated in ambulances hours before they get places to stay. So every government should be thinking about this. If the government is thinking about it, it's not an afterthought. I don't believe that 8 months in the second term is an afterthought for anybody.
Members of the National Environmental Health Officers Alliance Ghana are on strike as a result of inadequate personal protective equipment PPE to work with. The health officers have since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic helped to safely bury COVID-19 victims. We have on the line the National President of the Environmental Health Officers Alliance Ghana, Mr. Yao Akwala. Hello, good afternoon, sir. Hello, Mr. Latte, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome.
You have been working round the clock for about a year now, supporting the country to safely bury COVID-19 victims who have perished. Why are you now on strike in the midst of the pandemic?
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity, and greetings to all environmental health officers in this country and Ghana as a whole. Yes, it is true, we have laid down our tools simply because at the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, we were sidelined. When the Ministry of Health, for that matter, Honorable Manu, first made a first publication of a confirmed case in around February to March thereabouts, we all gathered courage to put in our best to help curb the spread of this virus. But along the line, when the Ministry of Health Ghana Health Service called its staff in the regions, they called the district disease control officer, the district nutrition officer, and all those bodies leaving environmental health. They invited environmental health in one of the regions, but along the line, they were sidelined on the note that they are with the Ministry of Local Government, so they didn't budget for us. So we were turned down. So only the Ministry of Health Ghana Service staff were organized and trained on COVID-19. We didn't relax. We went on our normal duties in the prevention aspect. Along the line, PPEs were procured, and the Honorable Minister of Health came out in the distribution of the PPEs. What we realized, what we saw, was that we environmental health officers are also health workers. Before 1994, we were moved from the Ministry of Health to the Ministry of Local Government to perform our mandate by the laws of the country. At the Ministry of Local Government, our management is the local office of the head of local government service, that's the head of service. And we are working at the metropolitan, municipal, and district assemblies. So the health, the medical officers, the nurses are all under Ministry of Health Ghana Health Service, whereas the environmental health officers are also under the Ministry of Local Government Service. But one thing that we should know is that when we talk about the pillars of health, we talk about the preventive first, curative, and rehabilitation. And moving the preventive aspect, the forces who are mandated to prevent any sort of disease have been transferred out of the Ministry of Health to the Ministry of Local Government. Where they are going, there is no counterpart or any other body that are into health. And we are neglected. So we are saying that we did not relax. We were still working as a frontline health workers. So our mandate as environmental health officers are to ensure that anything that is detrimental to human health is being advised on and necessary action is taken for recalcitrant offenders.
Mr. Latte, not to cut you, but has there been any discussion so far with regards to the concerns you are raising?
Yes, we have. At the onset of the COVID, if you relate it to COVID, we have engaged the Ministry of Health of our observation that we made on the 20th of May 2020 relating to COVID. So we wrote, executive sat down and took the concerns from the members across the country. And along the line, we wrote a letter to 4 ministries, namely the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development, now the Ministry of Local Government, Decentralization and Rural Development, the Ministry of Health, the Office of the Head of Local Government Service. Then the last one was the committee, the Rapid Response Committee on COVID-19 at the Jubilee House. I was part of the team that distributed all these letters. And today is 19th of August 2021, and our letter was dated 20th May 2020. And no single person from all these 4 ministries and agencies called us that to even acknowledge receipt of that letter. It was rather unfortunate. Along the line, all these materials or PPEs, personal protective equipment that we needed to go into the communities to enforce hygiene protocols, because we are the hygiene officers. We were trained in the schools of hygiene. So all the COVID that we are talking about is observing hygiene protocols. And who is a hygiene officer? It's an environmental health officer. So we are to ensure that the Veronica buckets in which the water are poured, what kind of water are they using? Not ordinarily water, but it should be clean water. So you say wash your hand with running water. No, it should be clean water. Sometimes when we go around, the Veronica buckets, the water that are poured in or fetched inside of this Veronica bucket are very dirty.
Wow.
So are we washing our hands with dirty water or what?
Mr. Latte, GBC News is very grateful. I think we'd have to call you again for a more detailed account of what your duties are, so that we will get a better understanding of who the environmental officer is. Thank you very much for speaking with us. Mental illness among young people between the ages of 10 and 19 is on the increase, particularly in junior and senior high schools. A research conducted revealed that 25% of the youth suffer from mental disorder, while 1 out of every 4 school children attempt suicide. A lecturer at the psychology department of the University of Ghana, Dr. Dankwa, who disclosed this in an interview in Kumasi, called for a concerted effort to tackle the issue before it gets out of hand.
An increase in the number of children in our educational institutions who try to take their lives, a situation that was not common in the past. The victims are between the ages of 10 and 19. Reasons assigned to this unfortunate situation include poverty among parents, particularly those in the lower and middle income countries. The challenge has been compounded by the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic. Parents are finding it difficult to meet the needs of their wards. Mental health experts have called for the guidance and counseling units of educational institutions to intensify their efforts or educate the children against the situation. Sexual abuse on school campuses is also said to be on the rise. It is to avert this that the guidance and counseling coordinators met at the Prempeh College for a seminar on how to educate the children against such criminal conduct, which sometimes truncates the educational career of the children, while others end up taking their lives. A lecturer at the Department of Psychology at the University of Ghana, Dr. Dankwa, asked teachers to help address the challenge on school campuses. The Ashanti Regional Coordinator of Guidance and Counseling at the Ghana Education Service, Mr. Stephen Fori, encouraged pupils who are sexually abused by their teachers to report to the authorities for disciplinary action to be taken. He mentioned, for instance, that at Bribrira Senior High School, teachers who abused some girls sexually have been disciplined.
It is stated clearly that no teacher, no GS staff, no personnel at the GS has a right to touch any student in terms of sexual harassment, in terms of sexual molestation. So if the situation is reported to GS takes immediate action. We have regional, district level, from the district level, the school to district and regional, we have discipline committees there. So the challenge we have is that most of them tend to cover the issues. But when the issue is reported to us, GS takes action.
The Kwadas Municipal Coordinator of Guidance and Counseling, Mr. Bribrira, said the COVID-19 pandemic has caused several economic crises among parents, reducing the ability to meet the demands of their wards on campus.
Farmers whose farms have been destroyed by floods in the Upper West region are appealing to the government to support them with seeds and fertilizer to enable them to replant their crops. Speaking to GBC News at Nadoli, the farmers said life will be difficult for them if government does not come to their aid with inputs such as improved seeds and fertilizer so they can restore their farms. 300 people are known to have been displaced by the floods which occurred a week ago in the region. The floods also destroyed the main Nadoli-Lora-Nandom highway and some feeder roads, making movement of people, goods and services difficult. The National Disaster Management Organization, NADMO, says it relied on assembly members to provide information on the affected persons since it is still difficult to reach some of the areas. The regional minister, Dr. Hafiz Ben Saleh, handed over the items to the beneficiaries.
Our people and community members were hardly hit and still are suffering from the impact of the flood disaster. The presentation they have made will go a longer way to alleviate the pain and suffering of people.
The presiding member of Nadoli Kalio, Dambai, Osbet Salifu, who received the items on behalf of the beneficiaries, thanked the Regional Coordinating Council and NADMO for the gesture. He gave the assurance that the items will be given to the displaced persons. A 53-year-old farmer from Nadoli, Mr. Donatus Tay, is one of the farmers whose farm has been washed away.
I just applied fertilizer, which was scarce to get the night, and it started raining. So every fertilizer I applied was washed away. And my concern right now is how to struggle to get another quantity of fertilizer to apply to the crop.
The regional director of NADMO, Mr. Mustafa Ahmed, said most of the displaced are currently living with their relatives in the affected communities. The beneficiaries are from the Nadoli Kalio and the Defiama Busie Issa districts, which are the hardest hits. Priority to the government is building a viable and sustainable mining industry, restoring Ghana's lost forest cover, and building efficient land administration. To this end, an 11-member advisory board has been inaugurated for the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources to spearhead this charge. Comprising the sector minister and his two deputies, traditional authorities, private representatives, land and mineral experts, the 11-member board will provide a strategic plan and clear policy direction to support the ministry and its agencies to execute their mandate. The minister, Mr. Abu Jinapo, linked the importance of lands and natural resources to the socio-economic development of the country, emphasizing that the ministry carries the very soul of the country.
The issues we're having to deal with are very complicated. We have matters, a myriad of matters. We're talking about the mineral resources of our country, their exploitation, sustainable exploitation of the mineral resources of our country, how to build the value chain of the mining industry here in Ghana, local content, issues of small-scale mining. We're very familiar with them. The matters of land, which is a very important issue to any nation, how to manage the lands of our country. The issues of efficient administration of land, how to acquire title, and so on and so forth. The forest cover of our country is also matters before us. And these matters together, if you want, really go to the very survival of our country.
The vice chairman of the board, who is also the paramount chief of Asin Aburinchi traditional area, Ehunabo Brimnana Prajinsem, said the board commits to supporting the ministry to meet its targets. A delegation from Sudan is in the country to study Ghana's standard procedures in mining. This is in view of the strides made in the sector, particularly in the artisanal small-scale mining sector and community mining initiative.
Ghana has over 20 large-scale mining companies and about 200 small-scale mining companies with 90 support service companies. The Sudanese delegation was led by the Minister of Minerals, Mr. Mohamed Bashir Abdallah Menawi, and accompanied by Ghana's Deputy Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, Mr. George Mrekuduka. They held talks with officials of the University of Mines and Technology, UMAT, and Anglo-Indian Ashanti Iduaprim Mine at Takwa to learn more about mining in the country. At UMAT, the Vice-Chancellor, Professor Richard Kwesi-Amankwa, said the university has the track record and capacity of training engineers for both mining and other allied industries.
We are saying, give us a chair of mineral exploration. Resource the chair with $360,000 a year for 5 years. We will explore 60 25-acre plots for you. If you give us more money, every month we will give you data on 2 25-acre concession plots. That is the university's contribution to small-scale mining. And we would demarcate this area so that the same Minerals Commission can now relicense it to small-scale mines.
The delegation was also at the Iduaprim mine, where the managing director, Mr. Samuel Wachipobi, took them through the operations, particularly their corporate social responsibility programs and projects. Mr. Abdallah Menawi of Sudan said important lessons have been learned and his country will collaborate with Ghana for their mutual benefits. He said students and personnel in the Sudanese mining industry will be sent to UMAT for training.
All in all, we had a very good experience. We had an expert from the people here. We had a lot of, views and procedures and arrangements to be taken or to be used here. We'll talk that experience to our country.
Mr. George Mrekuduka indicated that sanitizing the mining industry is a priority of government and no effort will be spared in that direction.
Small-scale miners in the eastern region have raised concerns about how some government officials are taking advantage of the mining regulations to extort money from them. Speaking at a stakeholder meeting for small and large-scale miners at Obuoba village in the Kwewu West municipality, they said such attitudes would make it difficult to enforce the mining regulations to ensure sanity in the industry. Some also suggested to government to make use of the local task force to ensure that miners who use the excavators and chamfan are arrested and prosecuted. Mr. Joshua Kwesoa stated that the 3 institutions responsible for granting mining permits include the Mineral Commission, Water Resources Commission, and the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA. The Minerals Commission, he said, is mandated to ensure that mining companies in the country actively engage in corporate social activities. The Eastern Regional Director of the Environmental Protection Agency, Mr. Felix Adwotre, pointed out that the EPA is mandated to close down any mining company involved in either small or large-scale mining whose operations contradict the EPA rules and regulations. The Eastern Regional Minister, Mr. Seth Kwame Champong, assured the public of his outfit's readiness to arrest and prosecute miners who flout the mining regulations. News Hour live on GBC News and Governance Channel. Time to take a quick break.